Hello, good morning and welcome to Politics Northwest. A bit of a different look to the programme this week, as you can see, because we are out and about in Liverpool, where we will be hearing from some of the candidates who want to be the city's next mayor. But after a damning report into the way it's been run recently, is it still a plum political job or a poison chalice? So welcome to the programme. Before we head inside and actually hear from some of the candidates, let's get some background to this particularly fascinating election from BBC Radio Merseyside's political reporter Claire Hamilton, who's here. Because Claire, this is particularly interesting, this election this time, isn't it?
Yes, Roger, and one of the candidates told me that it was the most unpredictable election he'd experienced in his time in Liverpool politics, and it comes in the wake of a huge turmoil in Liverpool's political story. The previous mayor of Liverpool, Joe Anderson, stepped down. The government ordered an inspection into aspects of the council's operation. That report found a dysfunctional council that wasn't providing best value for its residents. It means that commissioners will be sent from Whitehall to sit in the Cunard building after the election alongside the directors of departments like highways, planning and regeneration. And big decisions involving millions of pounds won't be able to be made without the say-so of those commissioners. So it's been a huge story which has overshadowed these elections but makes them all the more exciting.
And there's some doubt about how long this role will even exist.
Absolutely, Roger. The idea of Liverpool having a city mayor has been under scrutiny since it was invented as a role in 2012. Liverpool didn't have a referendum back then to ask people if they wanted a mayor. They just got one, unlike in other cities where there were referendums. The role may be scrapped in 2023. The council voted that they would do that. And with the Metro Mayor and a Lord Mayor, it's very confusing. And the question I'm most often asked is, why does Liverpool have so many mayors?
So aside from trust in politics, which is obviously an issue, what are the other big issues in the election?
Well, there are two really. The environment. Liverpool declared a climate emergency 2 years ago, but there's been a big discussion about how much action has actually followed that debate. And then, of course, there's the recovery from the pandemic. Liverpool relies on entertainment, hospitality, places like this. Those industries have been hard hit over the last 12 months. The next mayor has got a big job to protect jobs, the economy, and continue Liverpool's success story.
Claire, thank you very much indeed. It promises to be fascinating. We're going to hear from some of the candidates in just a moment. As I head inside to do that, have a listen to what people here in Liverpool have been saying to us.
Bit of a joke.
Well, you got too many mayors. £100,000 a go for each job. That's wrong.
Sad, really, that the city's reputation has been damaged by it's difficult to choose the right words, but wrongdoing anyway.
And what do you make of the government sending people in to...
It's a good idea. To be fair, it is a good idea. They need to sort it out.
So we've moved inside, as you can see, and with us here are 5 of the 7 candidates who are standing to be the Mayor of Liverpool. Stephen Yip is an independent, sitting just alongside me here. Tom Crone is standing for the Green Party. Steve Radford is standing for the Liberals. Joanne Anderson is the Labour Party candidate this year, and for the Trade Unionist and Socialist Coalition, we're joined this morning by Roger Bannister. Sadly, Richard Kemp from the Liberal Democrats couldn't be with us today, although we will hear from him during the course of the programme, and I'll also be putting across the views of Katie Burgess, who is the Conservative candidate who unfortunately is unwell and couldn't attend. So Stephen, you're the independent in the room, so I'll come to you first. Obviously, the issue of trust in politics after what's happened in Liverpool City Council will be in the front of many people's minds. What would you do to restore people's faith?
I think the one thing that our city desperately needs is accountability, transparency and independent oversight. So I've been talking to a group called Transparency UK, who specialise in anti-corruption in local government. And they've spoken to all the candidates, but I've asked them whether they could come to Liverpool and help to devise the systems whereby we could say to our citizens, we are now a council, we are now a city that is transparent, accountable and has independent oversight, and I stress the word independent.
Would the government's commissioners not do that? They're coming in, they're going to be keeping an eye on things.
Well, they are, but they're only going to be here for a certain amount of time.
3 years.
3 years. But the thing is, councils will go on and on and on. We have to lay down procedures now for the future. I've just left a Year 3 group, which is in our children's centre. And that's one of the main reasons that I'm standing to be elected Mayor of Liverpool. I want a future for those children. I want those children to be proud of the city in which they live. And at the moment, most of us aren't because of what's happened.
Katie Burgess, the Conservative candidate, said that it's no surprise that the current administration was failing the city massively, but to see the extent of the abuses was abhorrent. As a businesswoman, reading of the financial losses alone, the sheer waste of funds, she said, was horrifying. Joanne.
So what the Calla report highlights is disgusted. We're all disgusted by it. I don't think the Tories have got any place to point the finger, though, in terms of the sleaze that goes on within the Tory party.
Well, there aren't any Conservatives in Liverpool Council at all.
No, but I think coming from the Tory party, I think it's a bit of a cheat.
So what will Labour do to put things right? What will you do to restore people's faith in your party, which is the biggest party here by a mile?
So the reason I stood up is because I've got a track record in open public sector organisations, open them up to public scrutiny to ensure that the community is involved in scrutinising decisions made by public sector bodies. I will do that by having citizens involved in auditing our services and scrutinising the decisions that we make. So I too ensure that we will be an accountable, transparent and open council. But I know how to do that. I know how to deliver that.
Roger?
Well, although there are no Conservatives on the City Council, the way the Labour Council over the past 10 years has implemented Tory cuts, there doesn't need to be any. They've cut £420 million over 10 years, lost 3,600 jobs. The current budget is £15 million further cuts.
They didn't have any choice but to implement the cuts, though, because the funds were withheld.
No, I think they do have a choice. I think they should stand up to the Tory government. My strategy is to implement a balanced budget for a year based on judicious use of reserves, possibly borrowing, but mainly reserves. Use that time to build up a campaign amongst the trade union movement locally, working class people locally, to force the government to grant the resources that this city needs, as happened in the 1980s.
Tom, is there an argument here, given that the council does have so many Labour councillors on it, to have somebody who's mayor who is of a different political colour?
Well, of course, I believe that. I think a Green mayor would, by the fact that we don't have as many councillors as other parties, would have to work in a cross-party way to make sure that we get agreement across the different political parties. So I would certainly look to work cross-party. But more importantly, I think we need to really have a look at how Liverpool's governed, full stop. We've always criticised the mayoral model, and back in 2012 when it was brought in, we were the only party that voted against bringing it in and imposing it on the people of Liverpool. So I'd like to have a look at how Liverpool's governed.
So you're standing for a post that you would be in favour of getting rid of?
I would say what I'd like to do is, rather than just making a decision on behalf of the people of Liverpool, because that's what happened before and we've seen what happened under the previous regime, what I'd like to do is I'd like to have a citizens' assembly to discuss all the different ways we can improve things in Liverpool, involve at least 100 members of our city to discuss the various ways we can improve things in Liverpool and come up with a really good plan that's backed by the people, a people-powered democracy that can clean things up and make things better in Liverpool.
Steve Radford for the Liberals. Tom's got this idea of a citizens' assembly. He says it needs cross-party working together. Would you agree with him?
Well, I think the Greens have got a bit of a cheek about talking about cross-party working, because for the last 8 years we've had a budget working party. My party, the Liberal Party, worked with Warren Bradley, who was Lib Dem leader, and then we worked with Joe Anderson as Labour mayor, and we worked for the budget party, working party throughout. And the Greens did what they did best. They abstained from the process.
So Steve doesn't trust you to do what you say?
Well, actually, Steve's forgotten a little bit of the history of this situation, because when the first budget working party was put together under the Lib Dem administration, the Green Party did get involved in that, and they sat down, they went through the process, excuse me, and at the last minute, the Liberal Democrats completely reneged on the whole thing, and put forward a completely different proposal for political gain. So it very much undermined that process.
Okay, Steve, go on. Final comment on this.
I think going forward, I mean, I've spoken to colleagues from different political persuasions. I'm not going to put anyone in the spot. I think the problem with Liverpool is having either a overwhelming Labour majority or overwhelming Liberal Democrat majority hasn't worked well. Don't get me wrong, abuse of powers took place under the Story-Henshaw axis just as much as it has under the current Labour Council. The way forward would be open up plurality in the Council, and I think proportional representation, you've seen how it works in the Scottish Assembly and the Welsh Assembly. It's created far more openness, but much more constructive dialogue, because all the parties need to work together.
Okay, we'll get some other thoughts just from the others in just a moment. Let's quickly get a thought, though, from the Liberal Democrats. Richard Kemp, who couldn't be with us at this precise moment in time, told us this.
Well, I'll start changing things from 10 seconds after being elected. I'd change the name to Leader of the Council. I'd halve the salary. I would focus a new and smaller cabinet on the key priorities of the council, which must include, of course, rebuilding the council as well as rebuilding the city. I'd change our whole series of scrutiny processes. I'd bring everything out into the open.
So that was Richard Kemp for the Liberal Democrats. Katie Burgess, the Conservative, who is unwell and couldn't be here. She says the public have to be listened to and reassured in the wake of the report. We can see by how few vote in Liverpool City Council elections that the electorate locally don't feel they have any hope of making a change, and this election is a chance to make that change. Joanne Anderson, we could end up with a Liverpool mayor with almost the same name as the previous one. What would you do differently if you're the next Labour mayor?
So I'm already doing things differently. So my manifesto was built with over 200 people's contributions to the manifesto. I've got a long track record of engaging with communities.
Were they all Labour party members?
No, it was out on social media. Everyone had an opportunity to contribute. I think we got 177 responses through Survey Monkey survey. I'm much more engaging than the previous administration in terms of, I believe communities are best placed to make decisions.
Isn't social media just an echo chamber, though? Are the people who follow you, the people who engage with you, just the people who share your views?
The point is, I give everybody the chance to contribute to the manifesto. We've taken on board people's views. We've built a manifesto built on people's views. There was very good contributions made. People's ideas were sound, and we took them on board in building our manifesto. And that just shows that's the approach that I will take in engaging communities in our decision making and creating the vision that we want for our city, for our future.
Stephen, we'll come back to Roger in a minute, but a quick thought from you. I mean, as I said before, you're the independent, so you're unencumbered by any party machinery behind you.
The last 6 weeks when I've been on the knocker, there is a tsunami of discontent.
So what are the things that people are getting really agitated about?
They say there's no communication, no one listens, no one gets back to them. My aim, if elected as independent mayor, would be to work across the parties, but also to bring in the university, the unions, business, third sector, faith sector. The one thing that COVID has shown us is that when we work together, we can overcome anything. And that's what this city needs. This is a city that I love. I've spent 66 years of my life. I was born a walk away from this building in Liverpool 1, and I've lived here all my life. This is a city that I want to see the best city in this country. I want our children to be proud of this city. We have to work together, you know, and I think Tom's right and Joanne's right. We have to bring in the ordinary people of this city and listen to what they're saying, because that's what they want.
Roger, a final thought from you?
First thing, I'd like to get the commissioners out. I don't think you solve the problem of a democratic deficit by sending appointed commissioners in to take powers away from elected representatives.
They are going to come, though, aren't they? The government has said they're coming.
So. If I was elected mayor, I'd be doing everything I could to get them out and restore powers to the elected representatives of the city.
Immediately
It's ridiculous to bring commissioners in so near to an election. It could all be solved in the election by the people having their say about who runs a council. When I'm canvassing, every time I go out, people are absolutely appalled and disgusted with the involvement of police in local affairs and the situation behind that and the behaviour of leading councillors, etc. That should be resolved at the ballot papers, not by appointed commissioners from a Tory government.
And perhaps by a mayor, who you all hope to be, but that job could go in 2 years' time. To move the conversation on a little, I'll start with you, Roger, but do you think the job is even needed? You've got a Liverpool City mayor, a City region mayor now. Does Liverpool City itself need a mayor?
No, I was against the council decision to inaugurate the mayor. And if I'm elected, I will look towards a referendum to test public opinion on this. And if opinion is to do away with the mayor's position, then so be it. I don't think it's necessary. I think it's ridiculous that we live in a city with 3 mayors. Nobody understands why that is. It's as if we're tripping over mayors at every turn. I'd want to sort that out.
And Tom, you agree with that?
Absolutely, yeah. From the very start, we felt that the mayoral model wasn't the best model for Liverpool. We think it concentrates too much power in the hands of one person, and that has caused a huge amount of problems in the city over the last 11 years. The chaotic mismanagement of the Labour Party in Liverpool has, it's really dragged the name of Liverpool through the mud. So, if elected mayor, I will do 2 things. First of all, I'll clean up politics. I'll have a look at how we're governed, and I think that will probably result in the mayoral system going. But as Roger says, it should be down to the people. So you have to have a referendum.
You've got 2 years to do it then before you go.
Well,
be quick.
Exactly, yeah. But at the same time, if people do elect a Green mayor, they'll want to see some green action, because the people of Liverpool do care about the climate emergency and want to see some actions to match the rhetoric. All the parties are now talking the talk of addressing the climate emergency, but we're seeing very little action.
So 2 of you in the room would get rid of the mayor's position in a couple of years' time.
The Labour group have already committed to the referendum on the city having a say on the mayoral model.
Do you think it's needed? Do you think the mayor...
I don't think it's needed. I've voted against it at every opportunity, but it's already in process.
Okay, so you're against having a mayor. Steve?
Can I be absolutely blunt about this? I think we saw abuse of power before we had the mayoral model.
That's not the model.
We saw the abuse of power by a Lib Dem administration, not just Labour administration. I do not believe this city would have dealt with the financial downturns and the quick decision making that was needed in the last 5 years if we hadn't had the mayoral model. I'll be absolutely upfront with that. Sometimes you've got to make difficult decisions, and you've got to have someone to call the decision at the end of the day.
So you think the mayor is a role worth keeping?
I've sat through the Budget Working Party when others bottled out, and I've seen some of the debates that have taken place, and the trade unions are already involved. Excellent contribution from our trade union colleagues during the Budget Working Party. Okay. I want to stand in this election to do the job properly and to prove that the job can be a benefit to the city. And can I pick up on one of the points Roger made? I think there is a bit of a misunderstanding about Max Kohler and the Commissioner's involvement in the city. They are there to direct senior officers to give information and call in decisions. I think that is actually not unhelpful. And I welcome the involvement of the Commissioners, because some of the problems we have is not the councillors, it's actually the information being gained for councillors to make informed and accurate decisions.
You can join in the conversation, use the hashtag BBCPNW, as usual at this time on a Sunday morning, if you want to join in the debate. Stephen, is strong leadership needed?
I've spent 46 years working for a children's charity, and I think what is important, whether we have an elected mayor or we have leader of the largest party, there has to be accountability, oversight and independent standards committee. There has to be independence. We need a whistleblowers commission for council staff who feel they're being asked to do something illegal or immoral. They have to be able to go to somewhere which is independent and say, I'm being asked to do this. We have to have an independent oversight standards committee which can hold to account councillors and senior council officers.
Max Kohler's letter to Robert Jenrick, when he on the process of bringing in the commissioners, said the number of individuals who spoke to us as whistleblowers or did not want to be identified because of concerns about their safety. People were scared working for the council.
Yeah. And that's why we need an independent whistleblowers commission, which I hope other members other candidates will look at, which says if you are employed by the City Council and you have any worries, if you're being asked to do something illegal or immoral, come to us. We are independent, 100% confidentiality.
Joanne?
We have a whistleblowers policy. It was clearly used for the Calla report. In terms of bringing in other people, I think the Calla report brings in, the Calla recommendations.
Well, he was saying that they spoke as whistleblowers because they didn't want to be named, they didn't want to be identified, they were scared of the consequences.
They still use the whistleblowers policy in terms of their protection. We have that in place. In terms of going forwards, what we need, absolutely we need governance structures that are sound, open, accountability where people are protected. And we are doing that. We've got an improvement plan. We've got a number of days to respond as the Labour administration after payday, but we are already in process with our improvement plan.
Obviously, this is a comment from Katie Burgess, the Conservative candidate who's unwell and can't be here today. She says that if elected here in Liverpool, I would be best placed to work with the government to secure money for the country, for the city, as we try and build back better after the pandemic. The city is stagnating with the council taking people for granted. Has she got a point, Roger, that a Conservative can talk to central government in a way that no one else can?
No, I don't think she has. If there's money to be had, it should be had whichever administration runs the city. And for the Tory candidate to be saying, well, if you vote Tory, I can pull a few strings with my mates in Whitehall and get more money. That's a disgraceful way to run politics. That's not the kind of transparency that people have spoken about.
What are the big issues for you? Leaving aside trust, leaving aside whether the job should remain or not, what are the big issues that this city faces, do you think, in the next 4 years during the mayoral?
I think it's the biggest problem is the continuation of austerity policies and reversing that process.
Okay, let's hear what Richard Kemp, Liberal Democrat, who unfortunately couldn't be here at this time, told us on the issue of the biggest issues facing the city moving forward.
Things are going to change in Liverpool like they are everywhere else. The city centre isn't going to have as many people working in it. It's not going to have as many people shopping in it because people are working from home and White Van Man is delivering. So we've got to rethink what our city centre is for, what our district centres are for, what our parks are for, and do all these things in a post-pandemic era so that we come out of the pandemic and Brexit stronger than we went into it.
So that's the view of Richard Kemp of the Liberal Democrats. Joanne, what do you think are the biggest issues facing Liverpool?
Obviously, climate change is a massive issue that we have to take action. What we've learned during COVID, we need to build on. But obviously, COVID recovery is a massive issue. I want us to be an inclusive city where there is opportunities for everyone. I think what this period has taught us is that we can't rely on things we've relied on in the past. So unlike Stephen, I think plenty of leaders work together in the city already. I'm involved in multi-agencies, cross-sector organisations having a common goal, and I think we need to build on that. And whilst we have got high levels of deprivation in our city, we've also got a lot of opportunity. We've got growth sectors that don't have the people with the skills to do jobs that we need for the future. We have untapped talent. We need to marry them up. We need to support our hospitality sector. We need to rethink our high streets. There's plenty of opportunity, I think, in building back after COVID to be a city that thrives and one that is inclusive.
Okay, so the other side in a minute, but Roger, you were shaking your head, just a quick thought.
I live in Kirkdale, which is a predominantly working class area of the city, many social problems. And when I'm campaigning around there, not all I hear, a common view expressed is no one cares about us. No one cares about the north of the city. There's a perception that too much money and resources are expended in the leafier suburbs of the south of the city. And people don't feel as though there are the opportunities that Joanne's referred to. They just feel as though they've been left, ignored, but expected to vote Labour every time there's an election.
Steve?
And I just want to build on that, Roger. I've lived in all parts of the city. I've lived in the north end of the city. I've lived in Anfield. I've lived in Netherley. I think you're absolutely right. I don't think there is opportunities for everyone. Okay. But in terms of my manifesto, I want our whole city to accept to have opportunity.
Well, I think Roger's got a point. There is a tendency of people feeling in many wards it's taken for granted. I think one of the reasons why I'd like to see PR is because it actually adds some electoral competition and plurality in those districts. Let me get back to Joanne. I think Joanne's got some point. We need to look at social inclusion, but I think we've also got to actually start focusing on some of the positive opportunities. There's some real potential growth industries in Liverpool. During the COVID crisis, our public health effort has been first class, and that has been a resounding success. We've got opportunities now with Liverpool leaving and UK leaving the EU to actually look at the global growth markets for export. We are an international global city, and we've got to drive ourselves forward at looking at growth opportunities and growth industries, not just concentrate on the problems, because private enterprise booming in this city.
And Tom, is an economic boom, is growth compatible with a green agenda?
Well, I'd say I'm agnostic about growth. It's got to be the right kind of growth. So,
got to be the only politician who's agnostic about growth. I mean,
well, yeah,
surely
no,
you've got to want growth.
The economy doesn't have to be growing as long as everybody feels better and everybody has good work that they appreciate and they're able to live a fulfilling life. So growth isn't particularly important to me, but if there is growth, it needs to be good growth that is compatible with our targets of getting to zero carbon. So I would like to have a Green New Deal in Liverpool, insulating thousands of people's homes, making them warmer, cutting their bills, cutting carbon and helping address the climate emergency, but at the same time, providing people with sustainable, skilled, well-paid jobs. So I believe that we can increase the number of jobs in the city, improve people's quality of life, and that has to be done through really positive green policies. But of course, I wouldn't support growth at any cost, which causes immense harm to the environment and in the long term makes life for everybody in Liverpool worse. So it's all about having the right kind of economic investment.
Stephen, a thought from you?
I would agree that we need connectivity in Liverpool. The north do feel left out. We need connectivity. We need to have social assemblies in all parts of Liverpool where we listen to the people from the different areas. But I think also what we need, and what people have been intimating, is that we need a vision, not where we're going to be next year, not where we're going to be the year after that, where we're going to be in 20 years. Where is the Liverpool of 2050? The Liverpool that our children, our grandchildren, their children are going to inherit from us when we're gone. We need a vision, and I agree with Tom. We need a vision that is green, we need a vision that is inclusive, and I think the only way we can do that at the present time is to have an independent mayor who can bring not only the ordinary people of Liverpool together, but the people like the universities, the unions, bring them all together and let's say, what is our vision for the future and how are we going to get there?
Thank you. Stephen Yip, Independent, Tom Crone of the Green Party, Steve Radford of the Liberals, Joanne Anderson, who's standing for Labour, and Roger Bannister of the Trade Unionist and Socialist Coalition. Thank you, all of you, for joining us this morning. Richard Kemp is standing for the Liberal Democrats. Katie Burgess is standing for the Conservatives. Voters in Liverpool go to the polls to elect a Liverpool mayor on May the 6th. There are lots of elections happening as well. There's a Liverpool City Region Mayor. There are councillors in many of the wards as well. This afternoon at 2:20 we will be turning our thoughts to the Greater Manchester mayoral election. The candidates from that will be joining us to discuss the big issues in that part of the Northwest. But for now, from all of us here in Liverpool for this morning, thank you for watching and have a good Sunday.